Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm excited about this guest today. I would love to welcome Tamar Daniel. Thank you so much for saying yes and agreeing to talk with me today.
You're so welcome. I'm looking forward.
So, Tamar, I've heard your story before on another podcast, and I felt like it's so appropriate for our conversations around reproductive mental health and reproductive options and choices. And it's also sometimes like the exploration of what choices people don't even realize that they have. And that can also be limited depending on what community we are a part of. So, both of us being a part of the Orthodox Jewish community, I know there was a recent influencer who posted this very strong statement about something that really was outside of the realm of accuracy. And there was a lot of people that were like running after her in terms of like reproductive choice, and thankfully she pulled it down. But I think that speaks to the level of misinformation around what options people have and the choices people make about having their babies. So could we talk? Let's set it up from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I want you to share a little bit about your professional self as well, because I think you're one of the coolest people I've ever met. So
Hey,
tell us about who you are professionally, and then let's get into the personal.
sure. Professionally, I am fundamentally a fashion designer. That's what my training is. That's what I always wanted to be. I did that for a solid 15 years. And more recently, I have been looking into getting back into the fashion space, but this time through business ownership and leadership. So that's where I'm at in my career journey.
Okay. And I think what makes you so unique is I love how you're always looking to grow and to change and to push your own, kind of boundaries professionally. And I think it challenges me as a friend but as also as a professional to like see like we never get to stop growing. We really should be always pushing our limits a bit and be like, what more can I do? It's a little exhausting sometimes, but I love that energy.
Yeah, there's an animal, something in the rodent family. I don't remember. I don't want to get it wrong, but their teeth never stop growing, and they always have to like file their teeth on a stone, like a pumice stone, to keep themselves comfortable. And I feel like I'm like that. Like I don't want to be this way. But if I don't file my teeth, I just keep like changing and evolving. I was like, I gotta file it down to be comfortable.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So, can you take us through a bit of the beginnings of your life and your own reproductive story?
Sure, I've never been asked that before. The beginnings of my life, I am a fifth child in a six-child family, four boys and then myself and then my sister. What could be relevant to this is my parents actually lost their first child and she was a girl. And I think on some level, I always was very aware that I'm the child after the daughter after the daughter that died kind of thing.
Mm.
Maybe that's somewhere in my reproductive story, as you put it. And for myself, I had a very straightforward time building my own family. I met my boyfriend, then fiance, then husband, kind of organically, and never really dated anyone else or thought very hard about it. And we both wanted to be together and got married. Our families were okay with that. The the bump that we hit on the way was that we went through kind of I don't know what's normal, but we in the early 2000s, the late 90s, I guess, were dating and kind of became engaged and were this, cute, like modern Orthodox couple. And at that time, they were having everyone do this genetic testing. I think before you got engaged, or maybe, no, maybe once you got engaged.
Typically,
Yeah,
before we got engaged, it was
maybe it was
typically
before.
like with Daria Sharm we're referring to
Yeah,
specifically, right? So Daria Sharm
it
really
was. Yeah.
it was the pressure was do it before you got engaged, so we could eliminate any catastrophes after
Maybe we did
engagement.
that. Yeah, it's hard for me to remember the chronology of all these things, but yeah, maybe it was before. Although, what I never felt like that was a something that whatever those results would be, I never felt like I wasn't going to marry my husband. I guess it was just more like having information, where I
Sure.
think usually it's intended like, don't date this person if they're not compatible. That was too late for us. Like, we weren't gonna not be together. But we were both found to be carriers of a nasty, you know, Ashkenazi Jewish genetic disease. And the conversation really kind of stopped. You know, I think there was not much there wasn't much data or problem solving out there at the time, because I think maybe because we did the system in a funny way, like you were supposed to kind of find that stuff out and then go find someone who fits the profile. But so it was like we had this information, but not really the tools of what to do with it. And I think the guidance that we got was very, very messy. And maybe some of that is because we're very modern Orthodox. And so the leadership and halachic leadership at the time, I think, was a mixed bag. And this was a hairy topic in terms of like, oh, well, what can you do if you're, you know, likely to have a child who will be, you know, going to die from this disease basically within several years. I don't know the statistics exactly. And so we went on like a bit of a journey, but we were very much alone, I felt. You know, I don't think there was people to sit down and talk to or counsel us or present us with options. It was kind of like, well, so don't get married or adopt or just see what happens. I don't know. It was strange in hindsight that there weren't more people kind of presenting what we could do. But we did find eventually halachic voices that said, you can do screening, you can do IVF, you can test an embryo at an early stage, and different things that it became clear that there are pathways. They're not necessarily easy and we won't get the results we want necessarily, but like, you know, there would be a way to build a family or at least give it a good try. So did that give you my early life?
In that process, when you started to find those halachic voices, was there conversation around termination of pregnancy, that you can check early fetal development, and if that baby was presenting with the diagnosis, that they would indeed give you permission to terminate the pregnancy?
Yeah, I would say there was every opinion. That was one of them.
Okay.
And I came from obviously my family, and my husband came from his family, and our families had slightly different outlooks on this type of thing. And so that was hard as well, because it's like, okay, how do we find what comfort level as a couple when we're just a new
Your
couple,
kids,
relatively, you know?
right?
Yeah, kids.
Right.
And so that was hard. And at the same time, I didn't want to make my in-laws uncomfortable or make my parents, like, you know, it was like so many levels of trying to say, oh, we're still a cute couple and we should be allowed to get married, kind of thing, which is such a sad, you know, I really wish someone had taken us under their wing. I think that was a very hard thing to navigate by ourselves. But luckily, in the end, my parents have a friend who I guess I won't name, but is a very well-respected halachic authority, and he was also a medical doctor, and so very much at the cutting edge of these developments. And he sat us down for a talk in his living room. I mean, we're talking about 2000. It wasn't like you were going online to research these things, you know. And so I don't have documentation of what he said, but it was like where he wanted us to know that every day new options are becoming available and new technologies are becoming available, and that there's every reason to believe that they're halachically viable options, and that he himself is going through this research at the moment, and we should be encouraged that there are, you know, things that are coming to light that we can do, like testing and terminating within whatever it was. I don't want to say the
About
wrong thing.
12 weeks. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think at that point there was kind of like a buffet of like, well, you could do this, you could just get pregnant naturally and hope for the best. You could get pregnant naturally and terminate early. You could do IVF and screen the embryos. And then with that knowledge, it was like, all right, let's just proceed and we'll figure it out. Anyway, I was a student. We were super young. I wanted to make some headway in college, and I wasn't looking to have a baby like that year, so we were gonna wait a little bit. But he was fantastic, and with that, there was some voices that were incredibly insensitive and like harsh. And one of my in-laws' rabbinic authorities was asked to sit with me, and I was like 19, right? And he met with me alone, which I think is totally not okay, and like proceeded to drill me about like what am I going to do for birth control and how often, and just like super invasive questions by myself as a young girl. And I was only just starting to get my head around all this stuff anyway, like I didn't know what birth control options were
Right.
going to be available to me. Like I was just learning. And he was so damning. He was like, how would anyone marry such a couple? This kind of thing. And it was like the sting of that disdain, like I think stayed with me for a long time. And I felt just, it was just horrible.
Wow. Wow. I wasn't expecting that perspective in terms of the level of lack of support from rabbinic authority.
I
Understanding the
know.
confusion from rabbinic authority, yes. Like we really don't have options, yes, or we don't really know what to tell you, yes. But the idea of the distress over the choice to continue to get married, I wasn't expecting that. And that
Yeah,
must
or
be a
just to
lot to
put
carry.
you down, like as
Yeah.
like we're just as cute a couple as anyone else. Like that's
Right.
it's so
Right.
mean, based for lack of a better word. It's
Yeah.
just like mean spirited. Like you could say, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't endorse it, but like to put down the couple themselves is just. And
Yeah.
then we met with Rav Amital from the Gush, who was the Rosh Yeshiva at the time, and this was an ill-advised meeting that it was harrowing. But also, we sat in his living room, we had tea or whatever, and we shared with him what we were going through. And basically we hadn't known this, but he had had a couple of maybe two grand babies who had died from this disease.
Oh.
And no one set us up and said, hey, this is a sensitive topic. And like, anyway, he started crying.
Oh
He
my.
started crying, and we're just like,
What do we do now?
we had just come there for maybe a bracha, maybe an advice or something normal, and he was just like, he starts weeping. And it was devastating. And he actually didn't know that there were, new options available. And so that was also horrible. And then we start telling him, no, it's okay. There's things you can do. Like it was
Oh
a
my.
role reversal, and like,
Right.
so yeah,
Wow.
we had a lot of difficult meetings at that time. Um,
Did anything change once you got married in terms of like finding, like, how did you make a decision as a couple, a very young couple, when you were ready to start having a family? How did you find your own pathway forward in terms of reproduction? Like, how did you say, okay, this is the path we are going to choose? Like, what was
yeah,
that process of decision making like for you?
I wish I could really remember that. I think we just, um, I think we were just very optimistic and felt like we had time on our side, being young and having every reason to believe that we'd be fertile. And so I think we just were like, let's kind of see what happens. Let's see if it's really hard to become pregnant in the first place, or if the systems are supposed to be working. We didn't go through like a lot of extensive invasive testing or anything like that. And I
Hmm.
think as we kind of went along, we learned about ourselves. I learned that I became pregnant very easily, for example. And um, without getting too much into it, we ended up testing our babies early on, and uh, we were blessed with healthy babies. So I never actually had to go through the
Oh,
termination and all that stuff.
wow. So that was a real rolling of the dice in your favor. That's pretty remarkable.
Completely. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's really remarkable. And then in terms of, so you have these beautiful, amazing kids, by the way, amazing,
Thank
amazing
you.
kids, because I know them.
Thank you. Back
And
at you.
once you've built your family as you hoped it to be, you made a pretty interesting choice. Can you tell our audience about the decision that you made?
Yeah, I actually think I made that decision a long time before my family was complete, or what I thought was complete. I don't have, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm sure there's all these things are connected. But I basically had this idea, because I realized as my friends were also getting married and having babies, I realized I was having an easier time of it than many people, and an easier time of it than I thought my alter ego would be having, and
Sure.
so it's like, like I dodged this massive bullet. And I had one child and another child and another child and another child, and they're healthy, and I had easy pregnancies, and I had got pregnant pretty much when I wanted to. And so it was like, I kind of felt like I had been waiting for another shoe to drop. And I don't know if that's why, but when my fourth daughter was born, I felt like, I should do this for someone else. Like, this is pretty easy for me. This is a big, big deal for other people. I feel like that's something I could do to kind of even the score, which is silly, but that in my head,
Okay.
Yeah.
So you made the decision to become a gestational carrier for another couple. Can you tell me a little bit about the decision, and your husband? Was he on board? Was he curious? Was he like, yes, whatever you want, Tamar? Like, what was his perspective?
I wouldn't say I made the decision. I had this like inkling, and it wouldn't go away. That's how these things probably often happen. And what started out as maybe like such an outrageous idea that I didn't really know what to do with it just became like, well, what if I look at that and I see what the first practical step would be? And what if I just take the first practical step? And what if so I started just kind of researching. And I'm a researchy person, like, I like ferret around digging things up. So I was learning about it and like, what would it take? And is it legal? And is it halachic? And how old you have to be? And what your fertility status has to be? And there's like, a million parameters. So I think I just started feeling out like, is this possible? And I have a friend in the community who is endocrinologist, what's it called?
A reproductive endocrinologist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I had asked him about it because I guess we had been chatting about his work and I had shared early on like, this is something I'd love to do, and he was kind of like, yeah, great. Yeah. And I think I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but he really told me to get lost. And I think it was a test of like, is she serious or not? And I didn't know how else to go about it. So I did harass him a fair amount of just like, I'm serious. And so that was happening. And then in parallel, I guess my husband realized this is not just something she's talking about, like she's taking action towards it. And at a certain point, when I had all my ducks in order, I said to him, I actually really want to do this. So what would it take to get you comfortable, And that probably took years, I'm not talking about a quick thing, but and then he was kind of like, oh shoot, like
Is that person.
yeah. So his big things were mostly halachic, I think. He was like, what does this even mean? And then is the baby Jewish? And then how does it work with being a parent? And how does it work with, our intimate life? And how does this work? And how does that work? And I am not that way minded. I'm much more just kind of like gut and moral. And I don't know, I have like my code that I live by, and I didn't want to do anything not halachic, but I also think that how you interpret what you're told halachically, or who you go to talk to, or how you kind of carve your path, you choose those things. We all kind of find the halacha that within reason resonates with us. So for him, it was a lot of that, going and finding the right authorities and people that he respected and explaining the situation and then getting them on board. So like, what would it take? That became my question, like, hey, what would it take to get you comfortable with this? So and people have answers to that. They give you like a checklist. Oh, if you do this and this and this, then so I guess it just became kind of a project, and in addition to my job and my 4 children, I was like in the background, just like checking things off, paperwork and blood work, and just to show that I could do this. And all of that was before there was even someone to do it for. And then at some point, my friend emailed me or texted me, and he was like, this couple just came into my office, and we had decided as a couple that we would want this to be for a Jewish family for various reasons. And so he called and he was like, this couple just came into my office. They are struggling. They're at their wits' end. They spent all their money on the last round of like transferring embryos or whatever, and nothing or some. It wasn't that they weren't taking, they were taking, and they were
She was losing the pregnancies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and she had gone through that 11 or 12 times.
Yeah.
So you know, obviously it's just a heartbreaking story, and I was, but even if it had been less of a heartbreaking story, I was looking for someone to work with, you know. So it was like,
Right. Right.
okay, here's my people, you know. So I went and had coffee with the mom, which was really, really special in that she was just very, very raw, you know, and just as a human, she was like very, very broken down. You know, she had been through so much, and she was saying that she would cry when her husband went out at night because she didn't want him to see her crying. And I was just like, you know, just heartbreak after heartbreak, and no breaks, not catching a break. And I said, like, I have no idea if I can help you. You know, this is like very much a abstract thing, but I'm willing to try, you know. And so if you would be interested in that, then let's explore that together. Which we did. So she was, I think it took her a moment to take me seriously also, you know, like, why would this person want to have a baby? Like, it's weird.
Right.
Um, but we formed a really good rapport. We're basically the same age. Like, I don't know, we had a connection that made it easier. And so I guess we worked through the next hurdles together. Like, they had halachic questions, and they went to their rabbinic authority. And so it was not, at no point was it like a simple process, but
Right. Right.
yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the halachic component of this? Because I think, for those that are not religious or not Jewish or listening to the podcast or not familiar, whenever we're dealing with issues of reproduction and especially any kind of assisted reproduction, there's a lot of religious law that comes into play. We have what I would consider the rabbis who know a lot about these things and the rabbis who really know very, very little. And hopefully those rabbis refer to what we call the big rabbis to
Mhm.
assess the situations. Can we talk a little bit about what you were hearing from the rabbis who knew a lot, who were willing to even have this conversation with you? What were you hearing from them in terms of the stipulations that would be required in order to do this according to religious law?
Yes, with the caveat that I don't want to share who said what, because I'm always afraid
No,
I'll get
don't.
it wrong. And
Correct.
like, yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
What were we hearing? You know, this is a super hairy topic, and I feel like since I went through the surrogacy, it's become more so, actually, not less.
Hmm.
But um there were there were, you know, questions around the Jewishness of the baby, which is really interesting, actually, because it goes back to who is the mother biologically. And the gut instinct to that is, well, the mother biologically donated the egg, so that's an easy answer, right? But like, the gestation does affect some things in the DNA of the baby, which is super interesting. And the baby gets these kind of added stuff going through the birth canal. And so it is sticky. It's not a, you
But
know, no
even
pun intended.
knowing that you were Jewish did not change. I mean, it's interesting to me that if we knew we had a Jewish egg, really a Jewish embryo into a Jewish woman, why was there even a question? This is just
Because
curiosity.
some people say it's better to have the baby go through a conversion afterwards, so you know what you're dealing with. And some people say it would be okay that I'm Jewish, but I'm Jewish and I'm married, so does that change my status of now it's a married Jewish woman? And some people say if you have an unmarried Jewish woman, that's worse, because now someone who's not in wedlock gave birth to your baby, you know. So there's like all this
Understood.
stuff, and
Okay.
it's not
Mhm. So
pretty,
not
but
simple. Mm-mm.
right.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I will say, you know, for better or for worse, like, I certainly didn't allow myself to engage emotionally with all those like things, because some of them have very, you know, unflattering uh, underbellies, you know. It's like, so I was just kind of like, I'm just, give me a yes or a no. I don't really want to hear all the stuff, because it's I don't know what the word I want is, but it's like a little off-putting. So
That's a good way to put it. Mhm.
yeah, so it was like, I'm game, but I'm not looking to convince anybody. You know, it's like I would like to do this in with my body and my life, but like, I don't want to do anything that comes off as, you know, untoward, whatever. So and everyone gave the green light one step at a time. And so we had this pathway, but I'm just saying, like, even now, this certainly isn't like a replicable model. It's each time it has to go through, you know, questions and authorities, and everyone has their own little flavor of Judaism
Right.
that they need to clear. So
Can we also just acknowledge, because you just said, you know, this is my own body and this is what I want to do. And I think that that can feel very complicated for a very empowered and very, and a strong woman, female authority to say, to have somebody else say to them, not your body, you can't do this. These are the rules. These are like, only you can use your body in this way. I think we just want to acknowledge, without any solution offered, and just recognizing that even us hearing the discussion of this experience can give us feelings, right? It can feel
yeah,
like, wait, where's my body autonomy? Where's my right to make my own decisions? Like, and then also the dignity and respect that you continue to offer in that religious space, like saying, well, I am a religious woman, and however you define that, I am a religious woman, and our lives are lived according to religious law, and figuring out how to like kind of navigate the interplay between the two is what you chose to do.
yeah. And I will say, like, as much as and you know me personally, right, like that is a narrative that would get my back up typically, but in this case I think it's appropriate, you know, because you're creating a human, you know, you hope that this thing yields a human, and I don't take that lightly. And so whereas usually if you tell me I can't do something, I'll go do it, you know, but with this, I felt like this is appropriate. Let's have all the conversations. Let's make sure that we're checking all the boxes, because it's the creative act, you know, like it has to be okay. I want this baby to feel good with her place in the world. Like, I don't want to make a mess of things. So I felt like good that there were checks and balances, as much as I needed to distance myself a little bit from the like emotion of it, or just the impatience of going through that.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
you like, just because Tamar decided she's doing a interesting project, you know, it shouldn't just mean that now I can make a baby. Like, I think it's right that there's all these things on the way to
I love hearing you say
us.
these things. Yeah. What is it like to, once you've made the decision and you've chosen each other, right? She's chosen you, you've chosen her, or them, you know, her and her husband. Is there, the next step is medical testing and getting clearances that you are medically compatible, and then going through the preparation for transfer. Obviously the
And
legal
psychologically
component, and
compatible.
psychological compatible
Yeah,
and medically compatible,
right.
legally
Legal.
compatible,
Yeah.
right? Right. Um, how many months are we talking that that takes once you approve each other? Do you remember?
I think it was probably a year from
Mm,
those first meetings till the transfer. Also, like,
wow.
even just the approvals, and then there is the medical preparation of the body, which was several months.
Wow.
We had to like synchronize our cycles, and I had to take a whole series of drugs and suppress my cycle and this and that. So like, it takes as long as it takes. I can't really remember, but I think it was about a year.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
And
sounds
then
right.
in preparing for that process, um, can you tell me a bit about, like, were you sharing it with your parents or your in-laws or your children? Like, who knew that you were doing this Tamar project?
Um, my I have a couple of brothers who I'm very close to who knew. Um, I had shared with a friend or two. Um, no, not my parents and or my in-laws or anything like that, until I was actually pregnant. Um, yeah, what's the question? Like, who
Like,
knew?
who knew, and where, how did you begin to develop your support network? And then
Yeah,
I guess the next part of that question is, what, when did you begin to tell the people in your life that you were pregnant with not your husband's child and not your
yeah,
own?
right. I don't remember exactly, but I think it must have been around when I was starting to show, which for me at that time was probably coming up on 5 months, something like that. I carry relatively small, or I did with that baby. So I think I got away with it for as long as I was not looking to talk to anyone. If I could have done this in secret, I absolutely would have, but I
Mhm.
couldn't put my life on hold or pretend it wasn't happening or whatever. Um, and then there was a little bit of like, controlling the narrative, you know, like, so I had to get in front of certain things, like we worked with our kids' school to say, hey, this is what you can ask my kids and this is what you should not ask my kids. Or if people are harassing my kids about things, I shouldn't say harassing. I will just say I have a lot of compassion for people saying stupid things when they meet a gestational carrier. Like, how are they supposed to know what to say? We really don't have a good blueprint for this. So there were plenty of ridiculous things, but I also, unless they were nasty or mean, I have a lot of, I don't harbor resentment about that. I think it's fair, you know, but I didn't want my kids to get weird comments or comments that made them feel concerned or whatever. So we did speak to their teachers and explain the situation. I think everyone was thoroughly confused, but we gave them like a sentence to say and they said it, you know, like, and that was fine. Actually, my kids was like a non-event. Like, it was really very easy. I think because they were young or because they are like that, I don't know. But like, we were just like, oh, mommy's going to be carrying a baby for someone else for a little bit, you know, as you were.
That was that. Go back to my Lego now.
Yeah. And that was really, like, I don't remember them asking me questions. I don't remember them being curious. Like, I don't, and then someone had flagged to us at some point, like, you have to make sure that they understand what's happening because they may think that like that this is a baby that was from your family and you're giving it away. And they may start to think you're going to give them away and all sorts of things that I wouldn't have thought of. So we made sure to sort of, well, I'll jump ahead to the birth to show them the baby, to show them the baby's parents, that the baby's happy, the baby's going home with the baby's parents. It's not to do with our family, but our family helped another family and the kids helped. And that was nice, you know, that kind of thing.
Wow. Wow. Do you remember the feeling of finding out that you were pregnant?
Yeah, I think I do. It was cool. Yeah, it was quick.
Amazing.
It was quick. And it was just like when the arm comes down on the roller coaster and you're like,
can't get off
I can't
now.
pick this up anymore. So yeah, it was.
I will tell you, Tamar, when we moved here, you were just beginning to show. We moved to Philadelphia. And when I moved to a new community, of which I've done that a few times, I always pick someone in the community and say, just tell me what I need to know about people in the community. So I don't put my foot in my mouth. Like my first entree, and literally the first weekend I moved to Miami, I spent the entire Shabbos lunch complimenting their baby on how adorable she looked and looked just like the parents. And who did she look like? I think she looks like you and looks like you. And my husband's kicking me under the table and I had no idea why. And he says to me as we walk out the door, I'm like, what is wrong with you? And he looks at me and goes, they adopted her. Like, she does not look like them. I'm like, oh my God, you should have told me. So when I moved to Philly, somebody said to me, I said, asked a friend, I said, what do I need to know about who? And they're like, listen, don't comment on Tamar's pregnancy. I'm like, what? She's like, it's not her kid. I was like, okay, thank you so much for telling me. Exactly. Awesome. And now it was said as, you know, obviously, not obviously, but I will say to you, it was said in utter awe of what you were choosing to do and how you were choosing to help people. So I think that was kind of at least that was the vibe I perceived, was just astounded at what people do and the capacity of their hearts to, you know, open up not only their hearts and their bodies to other people. It was really, really exceptional. You had a pretty uneventful pregnancy, right?
Very much.
Normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you, in terms of your interactions with the intended parents, just for terminology, you are the gestational carrier. This embryo baby that you are carrying is not genetically related to you at all. And there's legal that goes into this that establishes parentage of the parents that are, we call the IPs, or the intended parents.
Right.
And that all is processed through, you know, with lawyers and through the state, actually, in order to, wherever you give birth, at the moment of birth, already parentage is established by the intended parent. So what was your relationship like through the pregnancy? What were your interactions with them?
So it was great for me. I think it was hard for them. And that's because, I mean, maybe that would have been the case anyway, but it was amplified by the fact that their halachic authority had said that he gave his permission for this whole thing under the condition that I never meet the dad until the baby is born. Now, and it happens to be I didn't meet him because he wasn't at that initial meeting, and so that was fine. And not only that, but I shouldn't even speak to either parent throughout the gestation, right? I don't begin to understand that ruling, but it didn't bother me. I'm an introvert. I like to be left alone. Like, it worked in my favor. I felt really bad for them. I think it was very hard, but I did my best. I spoke to the grandmother, the mom's mom, frequently, and she emailed me whenever she wanted an update, and we texted. And the doctor, both the gynecologist, the OB/GYN who saw the pregnancy through to the end, and the reproductive endocrinologist who started the process, understood the terms of the arrangement and went to great efforts to make sure that they get copies of every scan and updates after every blood thing, you know, everything. But they didn't get to be in the room. They didn't get to hear the heartbeat. I think they actually recorded it and sent it to them, but they didn't get that proximity. And I felt that that was a blessing. I didn't really want some man in the room with me while I'm having like a scan or whatever. I would have sucked it up, but I was secretly pretty, you know, relieved. They also don't live here, so it would have involved a lot of, you know, travel, commuting, whatever. So in the end, it was like very peaceful for me. I didn't think I was having my own baby, but I went about it and how I would for myself. So I felt like I did what I had to do, but I didn't give it that much focus in my life.
Did you feel like connected to the baby in any way? I don't know what your typical pregnancies were like. I mean, I never talked to my babies when I was pregnant, but like, did you talk to your babies when you were pregnant? And would you have talked to this one? Like, what was the level of feeling of attachment or connection?
Yeah. I don't know if I talked to my babies, and maybe like in my head, you know, kind of. I think I felt connected, but not in a maternal way at any point. I felt connected like you're babysitting for a friend you really like's kid, and like you like the kid and you're actually fond of her and like you want to take care of her, you know, like not an annoying play date that never ends and you're like, oh my God, get out of my house. It was like, you know, like I felt very fond and I felt very responsible. And I was like, we're going to take care of each other until we get to the finish line, and then your mom is going to take over, you know, like that kind of thing. So I bonded with her, but not like as her mom. Yeah.
You knew it was a girl at the time when you were pregnant?
I think I did. Yeah. I don't remember if they did. I think they maybe wanted a surprise. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then the birth, do you want to share anything about the birth and giving birth and what that experience was like?
That was crazy. My mom had always wanted to be at one of my births and I never let her. And I decided I'll let her with this one because it felt like a freebie. That was a strange idea on my part that probably added to the stress. But my parents were around and they were helping me watch my other kids and be here when they were. And so in the end, it was my mom and my husband, you know, and myself giving, you know, in the labor ward. It was Shabbat, which just made everything more complicated. So we couldn't, you know, call the parents, the intended parents. They couldn't drive here from New York where they live. I'm in Philadelphia. So again, it was for me great, like very quiet, you know, and I was left alone. I didn't have anyone outside the door having a heart attack that like about every push, you know. So it was pretty straightforward. It was beautiful. She was beautiful.
Were they planning on being at the birth with you? Was that the original plan?
Yes, I think
they would have liked to.
The initial thought was I would call them when I went into labor. And they'd come as soon as they could, you know, that kind of thing. And in the end, we called them as soon as Shabbat finished, by which time she was out
already.
Yep. Wow. And they came to collect her. So it was really, really sweet. I will say, like, no one had any idea what to do with this birth. And I mean, the nurses and the everyone on staff had no idea. My doctor, who had been taking me through the whole process, wasn't on call that night and couldn't come. So it was like,
oh my.
I mean, I was okay. Like this was my 5th labor delivery and I'm confident at it, for lack of a better word. Like I feel it doesn't freak me out. Like I feel pretty comfortable, you know, being uncomfortable, being in pain, but like I feel I don't get very, very stressed by the idea of giving birth, right? And so I was like, I got this, like I got my part of this. Do you all have your part of this? You know, like And
Right.
then they didn't. And so I was very much like remembering things. Like you said, there's a legal process. Like I said, you guys have, there's a form. And I had called the hospital before and I had said, like, I'll be coming in sometime in the next couple of weeks. And like, you need to have, these are the adoption, it's weird, but they technically adopt their child. So
Right.
I was like, you need to have the adoption papers so that the bracelet will not say my name on that you put on the baby as soon as she's born. And like, they were like, yeah, you're good. The people
I
on
had no
staff that night
idea.
didn't know any of it. So I
Oh,
was like quarterbacking that stuff
oh,
while pushing out a baby. And so
wow.
I just was
Okay.
terrified that they're gonna label her wrong or like make some kind of, I don't know how much of a big deal that would have been. But in the moment, I just felt like I came this far, like I'm not gonna screw it up now. Like everyone get your act together, like
Really, really. Like Tamar's running the project all the way to the finish line.
it was like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really like that,
What
so
was it like to see her for the first time?
amazing, amazing.
Really?
She was happens to be objectively such a beautiful baby, and just like, so my thing was I didn't touch her because I was scared that that's going to trigger for me this like rush of hormones and stuff. So I didn't hold her, and that
Mhm,
was probably smart. I
mhm,
think
mhm.
like I once she was out of my skin, it's a lot more real. I was like scared of my brain kind of crossing into like new mom territory.
Mhm.
But so I didn't, but I gave her a kiss and I said, goodbye. And I
Oh,
didn't hold her any at all.
uh-huh.
But I
And
wanted her to be held. So
right,
my mom and my husband took turns, like skin on skin and all the good stuff. And it's
until
like,
her parents could get there.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Did you see them receiving her?
not the moment, no, but there was a nurse who took photos of it and sent me. I guess I was sleeping or I don't
Oh,
remember what I was out of it.
right.
Um, they sent me
Oh,
pictures and they're very beautiful. Yeah,
wow. What a
the
treasure.
cool thing.
What was your postpartum like?
Fine. I shared this recently with someone. Like the smartest advice that I got was to take a drug to stop my milk coming in,
Hmm.
and that's not legal in America. So
Correct.
I had to get my hands on it, like contraband. But that was so clever, and I think it's pretty cruel not to give that to a gestational mom, because the last thing you need is to be dealing with like milk and sore
Hmm.
breasts. And it was just like,
Hmm.
so that was a real blessing. I think it helped a lot psychologically. Just we're done, I didn't go through that. Um, it also helped a lot that I had my job and my family to like get back to immediately, and like I wasn't moping, and candidly, like I really didn't want a baby. I was not in a place that I was
Mm.
wanting the squishy thighs or the whatever. I was like, I'm tired. I have my hands full. Like, I didn't want a baby. So
Did you take
that
time to
helped
recover? Did you recover
a
physically,
bit.
emotionally, a little bit? Hmm.
I think my way of recovering is throwing myself back into my life a bit, like that.
Sure,
If I were
sure.
to just lay in bed, I think I'd have gotten melancholy or started to overthink things. But for me, I
Wow.
didn't. So
Hmm.
that worked for me.
To clarify the medication that you're referring to, and I can't remember the name of it at this moment in time, it's not FDA approved. There's some pretty significant risks and side effects associated with it, which is why the FDA pulled it off the market. But it is legal in Canada and the UK, and it's unfortunate that we don't have something that works like that, especially for women. Like obviously not what we're talking about today, but where there's a stillbirth and women still produce breast milk, and we don't have any good options for them to prevent lactation. We
Yeah.
have heard of gestational carriers who actually have chosen to pump for a few weeks to give some of that early milk to the baby. Was that ever something you thought about or not really? No, no.
I don't think I offered it. I don't think it like that felt to me like everything post birth felt to me like I don't want anything to do with it. Like I also, because I wanted to keep my psychological boundaries like very clear, and that felt more complicated to me.
Did
So,
anybody guide you on the psychological boundaries? Because it seems you came to
oh.
this with such wisdom. I'm like, wait, I want like, it's interesting because there really isn't like a practice document about guiding gestational carriers or guiding IPs. Like we do have practice documents in terms of assessing for psychological readiness, but not for like, and how do I provide therapy and like everything you've talked about is very, very nuanced, very personalized, but also very nuanced. And we don't have guidance professionally as to kind of these are the best practices, or these are good ideas, or these are ways you can approach it for
Yeah.
psychological steadiness, but you didn't have somebody who
And
guided you in
also,
this.
however I respond won't be how another woman who does this
Correct.
responds. You know, it's like super,
Correct.
I part of the frustration, but I just saw it as like, this is part of the entrance fee to doing this, was that the professionals that dealt with me were not adept, you know, hadn't been through these things, or their guidance was just not appropriate for this situation. So I was getting a lot of, I think, tropes that you would say to someone who just had a stillborn, or, you know,
Right.
and I didn't feel I had nothing in common with that person. I was like jubilant, you know, I was like, I just did what I came here to do and I'm so happy. And they're telling me about loss and grievance and sadness. And I'm like, I don't feel that. So, you
Right.
know, it was, and they even put me on the ward with all the women who had just suffered a loss. And
Oh
it,
my.
yeah, because
Wow.
they, how?
No, I'm saying, oh my, wow.
Yeah,
Like
wow. Yeah.
unbelievable. Wow.
Which I think is
That's
it's a misstep. I understand that you can't put me, or maybe they felt like it'd be risky for me to be around crying babies or whatever, but I was put in such a sad place immediately after, and I just dealt with it, and I got myself discharged as quick as I could. But like, I had social workers cycling through and asking me completely irrelevant questions, and
mm,
I just felt like it's not like there's so many people that you can make a good playbook that will be relevant for everyone. Having said that, like, they probably could have done a bit better. Like, it was a bit
yeah.
sad. So
And today, what is your relationship or interaction with this little girl?
yeah. So first of all, she has a brother now as well. They went through it again with another carrier.
No way. Oh,
Yeah.
how beautiful.
Yeah. They
Wow,
have a boy
that's
and a girl.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's very sweet. My relationship is like minimal but happy. You know, we have a like a WhatsApp conversation, and they send us pictures usually like before Rosh Hashanah, and we always speak on the baby's birthday. She's not a
Oh,
baby anymore. She's turning 10 this year, but
oh my goodness, that's right. Wow. I still imagine her, even though I've never met her, as a
yeah,
baby. But
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Wow.
So it's fine. It's exactly what I would want. And that's probably not a coincidence, because I think I sort of put out there what, you know, like,
Hmm.
they invited me initially to this party for her and that party for her. And I didn't want to go to those things.
Hmm.
But like, I love getting the pictures and touching base, you know. So
If she, I don't know if this is a typical request, but if she wanted to meet you as she gets into adulthood, is that something that you would be open to?
yeah,
Hmm.
sure. For me, I just felt like, I think once she's an adult, whatever she wants is great. Like, I'm happy to chat to her, but I didn't want to do this and then like, sorry, and then take away from her parents, just feeling like her parents. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, that to
yeah.
me would kind of undercut the whole point. So I felt like I have my kids, like, I'm good. I don't need anything pseudo parent like here.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
we did what we came here to do. So anything else, like, it's nice, but if they never wanted to talk to me again, that would be fine as well. Like, I for me, it would ruin it if I felt like they needed to now explain to her who I am, or explain to her how she was born, or explain to her, like, if they want to, that's their business. Like, I just felt like I don't want to, I don't
It
need,
wasn't about you. It always was about her and creating this family for them. Pretty remarkable. Tamar, you want to talk about the very cute addition to your family that came as the last part of the reproductive story?
yes, definitely last part. Sure. So I don't know if I had decided that our family was complete when I had 4 kids, but I felt like we're good, and we had plenty else going on. And legally and medically, that was a window to do this, because you're not supposed to be a carrier after 5 births, I think.
Right.
And various other stipulations that I now wouldn't qualify for. So it was like a window of like, if I'm doing this, I'm going to do it now. And I felt like, and I had to sign extensive agreements that, like, if this ruins my reproductive system, I'm okay with it. I understand all the risks. We talked about what would happen if I die, if the baby dies, if the baby has various diseases, and if the parents want to keep the baby and I don't, or I want to keep the baby and the parents don't, or, you know, like,
Right.
everything was laid out, multiples and reducing multiples, and just like everything.
Right.
Um, So I knew that this has a certain chance of messing up, my system. And also maybe I would just be too tired after this or whatever. So, and that was fine, and it wasn't until a couple of years, I have to do the math, maybe 3 or 4 years later, I was like, you know what, I'll just have one more. So now we have 5 children and a very cute 5-year-old who definitely enhanced the family. And
So beautiful.
yeah.
She's terrific. They all are. They really are. I so respect and admire, first of all, what you chose to share today and the experience, both personally and psychologically, emotionally. It really elevates the conversation and also enhances the opportunity for others to hear not only what's out there, but also the internal process of someone who is a gestational carrier and also a religious Jew. And I thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for your raw and amazing humor and honesty. I love it. And I appreciate you.
Thanks, Tamar. This was fun.